Hello everybody. Welcome to another chart interpretation showing the power of Horary Astrology in relationship matters. The Querent in this chart is a woman in her 40s. She's been wanting to be in a long-term, stable relationship for many years, but she hasn't been able to. She has met several men, spent time with them, but it has never lasted. Her boyfriend, after about 6 months of them being together, decided to break off the relationship. She's brokenhearted, and she wants to know if he really loved her. And she doesn't understand exactly what happened, why he decided to leave. Let's see how the chart answers her question and what else the chart tells us about the situation. The Querent is the ruler of the ascendant. Taurus is the ascending sign, so she is signified by Venus, the ruler of Taurus. Venus is in Aries, in the sign of its detriment, and is in house 12. That's very descriptive. It reflects her state of mind. She's not feeling good about herself. She's distressed about having ended the relationship and the way things ended. Not a pleasant place to be in. Her ex-boyfriend is signified by Mars, as Mars rules Scorpio, which is the sign on the 7th cusp. Mars is in Virgo and is peregrine. It is right on the cusp of his own house 12, which is very meaningful. It is very common in relationship charts, especially the ones about breakups or when problems and challenges in the relationship are present, that house 12 is active for the people involved. And this chart is no exception. House 12 is about things that distress us mentally and emotionally as the result of an inner process in our minds and hearts. It's not something that comes from the outside, although it can be triggered from the outside. As such, it can manifest in many different ways in romantic relationships. Shame, fear of rejection, suppressed anger, or narcissism, to give a few examples. Normally, if Venus was in Scorpio, right here in his house, it would be an indication that she loves him or that she is in love with him. But Venus being in her own house 12, in the other sign which Mars rules, is not an indication that she loves him. It means that she is distressed because she is still under his influence emotionally and mentally, and she misses the intimacy. Normally, for a woman, in relationship charts, Venus would be her co-significator if her main significator was a different planet. Here, Venus rules the ascendant, so she only has the moon as her co-significator, since she is the Querent and the moon is the Querent's co-significator. More specifically, the moon signifies the Querent's emotions. And as you can see, the moon is in house 7. In the sign of Mars, which is the sign on the 7th cusp. This is descriptive of somebody who fell in love with him. The moon in Scorpio is essentially debilitated by fall, so that's quite literal. She fell in love or she fell for him. But it doesn't feel good to her. It feels unpleasant now. He, being a man, has the sun as a co-significator, because the sun is the natural ruler of men in relationship charts. In practice, the sun refers to his sexual interests, as Venus would refer to a woman's sexual interests. The sun is in house 11, but here, what is relevant is that house 11 is the turned 5th house from the 7th. This is very significant. This is somebody whose interest in the relationship is in having fun, having sex that is normal and healthy. However, in order to answer her question, we need to verify whether there is any interest on his part other than sex. Let's look at his main significator, Mars, and see how he feels about her, that is, Venus and the moon. If we look at the table of essential dignities, which is where we see the receptions, we'll see that Venus in Virgo, in a daytime chart, is dignified by triplicity and debilitated by fall. The sun is above the horizon, so this is a daytime chart. Mars in Virgo is in the triplicity and fall of Venus simultaneously. That means he has mixed feelings about her. Triplicity is a feeling of appreciation. It's a positive thing. but it's the weakest of the three positive things that a horary chart can show. There is triplicity, exaltation, and sign. Those are the three significantly positive ways receptions depict how we feel about other people. Receptions by the minor dignities of term and face are rarely significant and can usually be disregarded. Being in the sign of the other person usually means you're in love with the person, which is what the moon is doing here. The moon is in the sign of Mars, so she fell in love with him. As for Mars, it shows he has some positive feelings for her, but they are on the weak side, as shown by Mars in Venus triplicity. But it is also in the fall of Venus, and that's not only negative, but also a stronger negative than triplicity is a positive. The scale is tipped to the negative. That shows disappointment, so he is also displeased with her. He doesn't hate her, but he doesn't like her. So he does not want to be with her and broke off the relationship. That answers her question, right? Did he really love me? One acceptable answer would be that he had some positive feelings toward her, but mostly was not happy and was disappointed in her. He was interested in having fun and sex, and that was about it. Plus, Mars is not in any dignities of the moon, so he is indifferent to her emotions. She, on the other hand, doesn't feel good about herself, being in its detriment, but she exalts the sun. If we look at the table of essential dignities again, we will see that Venus in Aries is in the sun's exaltation. So she is attracted to the sun and wants the sun. She was interested in having sex with him and having fun too, so that was mutual. But she's not happy in Aries. If she was in her own sign or exaltation somewhere else, rather than being in Aries, she would be more centered on herself and stronger. The combination of her and his essential debilities, receptions and house placements show that they were not in a place conducive to a long-term relationship. So the question is answered. We could stop at just answering the question. But if we look further into the chart, we will see that there is a wealth of information about them and their relationship, and why it failed. For those who wish to learn about themselves and others, and grow and not repeat mistakes, Horary can be a fabulous tool. So let's explore this further. There are several further points in this chart that are relevant to the situation. In addition to indicating accidental dignity, the nodes function as signposts. They say, look here, and if the context allows, we interpret them. The nodes are on their second house axis, her second house and his second house. House 2 is very relevant in relationships. This brings up the theme of self-expression, self-image, and behavior, how we behave towards the other person. Some people like gentle and some like rough. Whether this is a good thing or not depends on the person's preference. Some like to curse, others dislike cursing. Some speak loudly and some hate that. Some speak or act too fast. Some need time and patience. Some express their emotions at every opportunity. Some feel overwhelmed by that. Some expose their inner lives openly. And some are more private and more closed, so express less their inner world. These are all things related to how and what we express to others. Thus, they are a House 2 matter. The nodes here are indicating that there is something about how they treated one another that fell short of expectations, very likely for both of them. The ruler of her House 2 is Mercury, as we have Gemini on the second cusp. Mercury is conjunct with Neptune. Neptune indicates things that are hidden. There is something hidden or not clear about her House 2 in their relationship. She is not aware of something she did or said. Behavior or House 2 is something that is commonly left out of relationship horaries. But how we treat one another is super important and has a huge impact on the outcome and state of our relationships. If the partner says or does something that is unacceptable to us, we have to address it. hopefully in a mature and intelligent way. If we cannot address it, we need to learn to address it if we are to retain the relationship. If not, we either break up or have to endure a miserable relationship. How we behave influences the relationship, and this chart is demonstrating that such a fact had an impact on their relationship and their breakup. And not only that, we can see in what area of the relationships that impact played out. Let's look again at Mercury, the ruler of her second house, that is, the things that she says or does. Mercury is conjunct with Saturn by Antiscion. Mercury, at 1 degree and 15 minutes of Pisces, has its Antiscion at 28 degrees and 45 minutes of Libra, which is where Saturn is. What does this mean? It means that her behavior is directly connected with Saturn and influences Saturn, and vice versa. What could Saturn be? Well, remember the Sun and that he was interested in intimacy and sex? Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius and the 5th house from the 7th. It signifies his pleasure or his experience of intimacy. So her behavior affected his pleasure directly. Something she said or did impacted his house 5. Mercury being in its detriment and fall hints at talking or doing something out of turn in their intimacy. And Mars is ruled by Mercury. Thus, we have a clue that this dynamic is a significant reason, if not the main reason, for him to wish to leave the relationship. We can see so far that there's more than just simply, "Did he love me?" in this chart. If we want more information, there is more information. Horary always shows all of the factors that are relevant to a situation. They all appear in the chart. If we want to learn from our relationships, that is amazing, because it will show us everything that happened that is of importance. And then we can work on it, become aware of it, and not repeat our mistakes, ideally. Or, on the other hand, we may simply realize that there are certain things we like and other people don't like, and vice versa. And we are better off apart than being together. Horary teaches us about ourselves and about other people, which is great in terms of relationships. The more we know about people, the better the chances of being in a nourishing relationship, and the better the chances of getting out of a relationship that's not good for us. There is more in the chart. Let's keep looking. The Moon is in a perfect square with the Sun. So the Moon is strongly influenced by the Sun, and the Sun is strongly influenced by the Moon. The square hints at a connection that was awkward, to put it mildly. Both the Moon and the Sun are essentially debilitated. They're not happy, and they cannot make one another happy. She is likely expressing an upset emotional state. And the Sun is in its detriment in Aquarius, so he cannot behave well as a man either. And so, as we can expect, things do not turn out well when they are like that. Unless they bring things to light, communicate and develop their relationship further, the tendency is that they're going to separate. We can see that Jupiter is right on the ascendant here. It's actually inside house 1. The rule is that a planet less than 5 degrees before a cusp places that planet in that house. Here we have a very large house 12. We have an incepted sign there. In this case, we can stretch and add a couple more degrees to that rule. Being at 4 degrees and 29 minutes of Taurus, Jupiter is well within the range of being in house 1. So, being in house 1, Jupiter has a strong influence on her. What is Jupiter? The Arabic part of marriage is located at 12 degrees of Sagittarius, so its dispositor, Jupiter, signifies their relationship. The Arabic part is right on his second cusp, further emphasizing the house 2 theme and its connection to the relationship's outcome. Jupiter's location is telling us that the relationship was very important to her. We know from the context that she has wanted a stable relationship for some time. So Jupiter's position corroborates. It does not mean this relationship was good for her or that she liked it. It simply means that it had weight in her life and psyche. We know that he took the initiative to break up, and we saw that he did not want to be with her, as shown by Mars being in Venus's fall. If we take another quick look at the table of dignities, we will see how Mars is disposed toward Jupiter, that is, how he feels about the relationship itself. Mars in Virgo is in Jupiter's detriment, so he basically hates the relationship and thus rejects it. If we wanted to interpret Mercury and Jupiter as House 12 rulers, we could. This is something the psychological astrologer and the Querent could engage in discussion about. When we get into a relationship and we do things we don't like, and we're not pleased with ourselves, and we still insist on being in that relationship, that includes an active House 12. It is the same if we simply put up with other people's behavior that does not suit our preferences. And we know that House 12 is active in this chart, because Mars is right on his 12th cusp, and Venus is inside her House 12. So we can double the interpretation here and go further by investigating House 12 and how it manifests in the Querent's life, if she and the astrologer wanted to. Finally, we can see that Mars and Venus are conjunct by Antiscion. Venus is at 7 degrees 37 minutes of Aries, and its Antiscion falls at 22 degrees and 23 minutes of Virgo, which is where Mars is. What could that mean? We already know they are connected, so what is the chart trying to tell us? Antiscion can have a connotation of something hidden, obscure, something that cannot be seen, or plain unawareness, as does Neptune. So we have plenty of that being emphasized in this chart. All of the things that I mentioned about House 2, House 5 and House 12 are things they decided not to acknowledge about themselves and one another. They decided they did not want to bring those things into light in their relationship and work through them. There is nothing necessarily right or wrong with that decision. They were not meant to go through that process together, and they are moving on with their individual lives. The Venus-Mars conjunction by Antiscion could be interpreted as indicating that they decided to remain hidden from one another. They decided to keep their incompatibilities hidden from one another, rather than bringing them to light. So they simply said goodbye to one another. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. If you have comments, questions or suggestions about horary subjects you would like to see a chart interpretation in the future, feel free to leave a comment below. For those who wish to go deeper into the topics explored in this video, I offer private tuition, lectures, webinars, and one-on-one mentoring on traditional astrology. The links to my websites can be found in the description below. Thanks for stopping by. Till next time.